those who choose a dishonest and cunning way of life may appear to achieve success very quickly in the eyes of the world. Yet only those who steadfastly preserve a kind heart and live with integrity can truly walk firmly along the long and challenging path of human existence. Make a vow to remain a good and honest person, no matter how harshly or unfairly life may treat you, for that very goodness will become the guiding light that prevents your soul from falling into the darkness of resentment, anger, and delusion. Living virtuously is not only for the benefit of others, but first and foremost so that you may rest peacefully each night, free from the torment of wrongdoing and the fear of consequences born from unwholesome actions. For when we give rise to the intention to do good, the heart naturally becomes lighter and more serene, allowing us to experience genuine happiness arising from a profound inner peace. True happiness is not found in fleeting external possessions or appearances, but in a mind that is calm and steady, able to let go of what is unnecessary and remain untouched by endless worries. Whatever can be released should be gently laid down, for even the fiercest anger will eventually settle if we do not continue feeding it with thoughts of revenge and retaliation. Never seek to strike back or compete merely to satisfy your pride, because such actions only cloud the heart and ultimately bring greater harm to yourself than to anyone else. If you wish to discover authentic happiness, learn the art of forgiveness, for forgiveness not only liberates others, but also frees you from the burdens that weigh heavily upon your own heart. Yet forgiveness should not be limited to what we offer others. It must also be practiced toward ourselves, so that the wounds hidden deep within the heart may gradually heal. This means accepting both our own shortcomings and mistakes, as well as those of others, choosing not to be overly harsh or self-punishing, but instead transforming suffering through compassion and understanding. Every choice and action in life should arise from a heart devoted to love, patience, and gentleness, for these qualities form the foundation of a truly peaceful and harmonious existence. Aspire to become a small light in this world, for even a tiny flame or a single drop of water can bring warmth and comfort to the hearts and lives around it. When we preserve a kind and wholesome heart, our very presence becomes a source of joy and peace for others, like a gentle breeze carrying tranquility wherever it goes. Choosing to live with kindness does not mean being weak. It means understanding that compassion and goodness are the original and pure qualities deeply rooted within human nature. The wise teachings of the past remind us that human beings are inherently gentle by nature, and therefore we should never willingly lead ourselves onto a path of cruelty and darkness. Those who commit harmful deeds will eventually bear the consequences that correspond to their actions, which is why the truly wise always choose a peaceful way of living and sow seeds of goodness for the future. When we choose patience and restraint, it is not because we have lost or retreated, but because we understand that one step of forbearance can dissolve countless conflicts and create lasting peace. By stepping back just a little and seeing from a wider perspective, we realize that the sky remains vast and life remains boundless, making petty competitions and trivial disputes seem insignificant. Choosing forgiveness is not an act of weakness, but an expression of wisdom and compassion, for it is among the most noble virtues a human being can cultivate. 4. Forgiveness is always the right path, because it dissolves resentment and opens the way toward peace and well-being for both ourselves and others. 5. We forgive not because we abandon our principles, but because we understand that no situation in life should be pushed to the extremes of hostility or mercilessness. 5. Life naturally contains countless things that do not unfold according to our wishes, and whether we like it or not, they continue to exist and operate according to their own causes and conditions. What truly matters is not the external circumstance itself, but the attitude we choose to maintain when facing the ever-changing events of life. 4. If you are able to help someone, do so willingly, without excessive calculation or expectation of reward, because the value of a good deed resides within the action itself. 4. Give generously with a joyful heart and without regret, for in the end, none of the material things we possess can accompany us when we leave this world. There are still countless people around us who suffer from poverty and hardship, and the true meaning of life lies in serving, supporting, and sharing with those in need. Continue to love, even when you are misunderstood or criticized, for words of judgment and gossip are merely tests that strengthen your resolve on the path of goodness. 4. The world is often filled with complexities, and if we cling to every word and action of others, we only make our own hearts heavier and more burdened. Life becomes truly meaningful when we learn to forgive and keep our hearts open, for this is how inner peace and compassion are nourished and allowed to flourish. 5. Share your knowledge and understanding with others rather than keeping it only for yourself, because when your journey in this life ends, you cannot carry that knowledge with you. If precious wisdom is merely stored away and never shared, it will gradually fade with time and fail to bring benefit to anyone. Life becomes more beautiful and worthwhile when people willingly share and spread positive values with one another. Those who view life as a battlefield will continually encounter struggles, conflicts, and endless exhaustion. In contrast, those who see life as a journey of learning and experience are able to discover beauty within every moment and every stage along the way. Others regard life as a drifting cloud that is constantly changing, and therefore they remain calm and untroubled in the face of every transformation. And, in truth, life itself rarely contains absolute right or wrong. Much depends on how we choose to accept, interpret, and understand what unfolds before us. Whether we experience happiness or suffering largely depends upon the state of mind we bring to the changing circumstances of life. Life resembles the weather, sometimes sunny and sometimes stormy, with periods of rise and decline that teach us how to adapt, mature, and grow stronger. Only after experiencing many failures do we truly understand the value of humility and patience on the path of practice and daily living. When we achieve significant success, we become even more aware of the importance of courage and unwavering faith in the path we have chosen to follow. Through meeting many different people, we come to understand the profound value of sincere friendship and the blessings of wholesome connections in life. And as we study and experience more teachings of the Dharma, we grow in appreciation for deep understanding and greater compassion toward all beings. Aim. When we attain fame, wealth, or worldly success, we eventually realize the true value of letting go and living lightly without attachment. And only after passing through many conflicts do we fully recognize the preciousness of harmony, reconciliation, and forgiveness within all human relationships. And when we are confronted with many situations that go against our wishes, we learn how to cultivate the mind and nurture the practice of letting go phase, so that the heart is no longer bound by attachment and resistance. Through countless interactions and encounters with others, we gradually come to understand the profound value of inner stillness, purity found, and the deep peace that arises from a tranquil mind. When we are faced with deception and falsehood, we come to appreciate even more deeply the beauty of sincerity, honesty, and simplicity in the way human beings choose to live. Learn to release whatever causes unrest within your heart and step away from places or relationships that slowly exhaust your spirit and diminish your sense of self-worth. For this is the mark of one who lives mindfully and knows how to protect the well-being of the soul. As long as tomorrow still exists, today will always remain a meaningful beginning from which we can direct our hearts toward what is true, wholesome, and noble in this life. In this human existence, each person may choose the work they love and the place where they wish to belong. Yet, no one can choose the circumstances of their birth or the conditions into which they first arrive. Some are born into comfort and abundance, while others grow up amid hardship and scarcity, and still others enter the world in peaceful lands or places filled with turmoil and suffering. All of these conditions are influenced by the workings of karma, where wholesome and unwholesome actions planted in the past help shape the circumstances each person encounters in this life. Even so, circumstances are not fixed forever, because anyone can transform their life if they learn to transform their mind and act in ways that are wise and wholesome. A person born into wealth who makes no effort to grow and improve, but merely indulges in pleasure while exhausting accumulated blessings, may gradually lose everything and eventually fall into hardship. Conversely, one who comes from poverty yet remains diligent, steadfast, and determined can gradually transform their destiny and move toward a life of greater stability and abundance. The mind gives rise to outward conditions, and circumstances themselves are influenced by the state of the heart. Which is why success and failure depend not only on ability and opportunity, but also on how one perceives oneself. When a person convinces themselves that success is impossible, that very belief becomes a barrier that prevents them from continuing forward on their chosen path. When facing suffering and adversity, if the heart is filled with fear and avoidance, one easily falls into resignation and loses the determination needed to rise above circumstances. Those who possess an open and compassionate heart do not view hardship as an injustice, but instead see it as an opportunity to mature, learn, and transform themselves. They do not resent life, nor do they place blame upon others, but maintain a calm and balanced heart while continuing their efforts with unwavering perseverance. In every circumstance, they remain committed to learning and working diligently, taking one step at a time toward improving their lives and overcoming difficulties. When confronted with life's challenges, some people hesitate, some fall, yet there are also those who courageously stand up again and continue moving forward. Fact, every challenge and obstacle that appears along the journey of life is a precious opportunity to strengthen our willpower and cultivate unwavering stability within the heart. Bound. Those very difficulties become the foundation that prepares us with the inner strength necessary to achieve greater accomplishments in the future. Bound. Both the path of life and the path of spiritual cultivation share one essential requirement: unwavering perseverance, patience, and continuous diligent effort. 5. If a practitioner allows the mind to wander carelessly, becoming easily distracted by temporary pleasures and attached to fame and gain, true transformation becomes difficult to attain. Find such a person lacking dedication to practice and unable to overcome their own negative karmic tendencies, finds that their spiritual efforts become as futile as trying to cook rice from sand. 5. Everything in life is created and shaped by the mind. So whenever time passes, rather than blaming life itself, we should look within and ask how much our own heart has truly changed. At times, we may feel that life is unfair because we have given so much without receiving an equal return. Yet, what comes back to us is often more subtle and profound than we realize. Whenever we offer love and support to others, we receive in return a quiet joy within the heart, even though it may not always be visible or tangible. 5. There are moments when we stand beside others through their sorrow and pain, yet when our own hearts become fragile, we cannot seem to find someone who truly listens and understands. 5. This is not necessarily unfairness, but rather a reflection of how the timing of receiving what we have given can differ throughout the course of life. 5. All giving and receiving unfold according to causes and conditions. Sometimes the results arrive quickly, sometimes slowly, but they are never truly lost. Every person enters this world carrying karmic connections and debts of gratitude with others, and the acts of giving and receiving are often ways through which these connections are fulfilled. When we offer goodness to others, we receive a profound peace within the heart, and that peace is among the most precious rewards of all. True generosity is the act of giving without expecting repayment and without calculating gain or loss, thereby preserving the purity and serenity of the mind. The more we calculate advantages and disadvantages, the more troubled we become, and the more likely we are to lose the joy naturally present in wholesome actions. When we give while secretly expecting something in return, we lose both our inner happiness and the genuine peace that comes from selfless generosity. Everything we do for one another in this life carries the nature of giving and repaying, whether those exchanges are visible to the eye or hidden beyond ordinary perception. Yet, what truly matters is that we always receive something in return, either the happiness and peace born from goodness or the suffering created by our own state of mind. All of these experiences revolve endlessly within the ever-turning cycle of cause and effect that shapes human life. Even knowing that we may encounter disappointment and difficulty, we should continue to give, because giving is one of the ways we nurture love and compassion within ourselves. When we give, we become part of the flow of life itself, a flow in which everything is constantly moving, changing, and continuing without end. Life has no true ending, for what we perceive as the final destination is often merely the beginning of a another journey within the endless cycle of rebirth and becoming. Live each moment of this human life fully and mindfully. For every joy and sorrow, every success and failure will eventually pass like waves upon the ocean, unable to remain forever whelmed. Just as spring eventually yields to autumn, so too does human life pass through its seasons. And therefore we should live with love and spread warmth to all beings, so that every day carries deep meaning. When we cultivate a heart that flows harmoniously with wholesome conditions, life becomes lighter, more open, and free from the burdens of comparison and competition. If we can preserve a peaceful heart, life naturally becomes more liberated and at ease, no longer shaken by the ever-changing circumstances of the external world. When the intention of compassion continually arises within the heart, we naturally perform many wholesome deeds and bring genuine benefit and comfort to those around us. If we cultivate gratitude toward life itself, we will more clearly experience the simple yet profound happiness that quietly exists within every breath we take. When we deeply understand the law of cause and effect, our decisions become wiser, allowing us to know when to move forward and when to step back in order to preserve harmony. Knowing how to yield at the right moment makes life lighter and more joyful, helping us avoid unnecessary conflicts and needless emotional burdens. If we maintain a simple and unpretentious heart, everything that comes into our lives becomes easier to accept and far less complicated than it once seemed. By developing the habit of reflecting upon ourselves each day, we gradually become more mindful, awakened, and deeply aware of who we truly are in every circumstance. In our daily relationships, every encounter arises through causes and conditions, and nothing happens entirely by accident or without a deeper connection. If we view others through the eyes of an awakened being, we will discover within them many beautiful qualities worthy of appreciation and respect. On the other hand, if we approach others with judgment and suspicion, we will see only what is negative, frightening, and flawed within them. Just as when looking into a mirror, if we smile, the reflection smiles back with brightness and joy. But if we frown, we see only sadness staring back at us. Friend, the same principle applies to friendship. When we treat others with sincerity and respect, we naturally receive kindness, warmth, and courtesy in return. Yet when we behave rudely or without respect, the result we receive is often distance, disappointment, and dissatisfaction from those around us. Therefore, in life, treat friends with sincerity, family with devotion, and those you love with a generous and understanding heart. Even toward those who have caused us pain, we should learn to forgive, for forgiveness is ultimately a way of liberating our own soul. And when we consistently maintain a kind heart and treat others with goodness, people will gradually sense that sincerity and respond with goodness of their own. And the virtues accumulated within the heart steadily improve the quality of our lives and create a deeper sense of stability and peace. And accepting others is also an opportunity to grow ourselves, allowing us to learn valuable lessons from the differences that exist between people. When we learn to empathize with those around us, our hearts become more expansive and are no longer confined by the limitations of a small and self-centered ego. A person who possesses tolerance and compassion faces life with a wholesome heart and refuses to be carried away by negativity and bitterness. And those of noble character always treat others with respect because they understand that every individual possesses their own unique value and dignity. And a truly cultivated person reveals their inner refinement through gentle behavior and through considering the well-being of others before thinking only of themselves. Find, it is people of such character who genuinely earn the care, admiration, and respect of those around them. Then, when we know how to respect others, life itself responds by returning to us a corresponding measure of appreciation and honor. Then, by treating everyone with gentleness and understanding, we begin to feel peace spreading quietly throughout our own inner world. Then, both appearance and circumstance arise from the mind, and when the heart changes, the world around us gradually changes as well. Then, when goodness within the heart becomes abundant, it naturally expresses itself outwardly and spreads to others, creating wholesome and beneficial results. And kindness nourishes virtue and remains one of the highest and most precious qualities that a human being can choose to cultivate. But although kindness may not grant us everything we desire, it provides a stable mind, inner clarity, and the wisdom needed to navigate life. Then, wisdom may sometimes be a natural gift, but kindness is always a conscious choice that each person must willingly make. Fine. As people mature through life, some develop faces that radiate gentleness and blessing, while others carry expressions marked by tension, resentment, and unrest. Then, this arises from the inner world of the heart, for one's appearance gradually reflects whatever thoughts and emotions are continually nurtured within. Face. When the mind is pure and clear, the face naturally becomes softer and more peaceful. But when the heart is filled with calculation, the countenance grows heavy and burdened, bound. The mind is like a path, and the more schemes and selfish intentions it carries, the narrower and more difficult that path becomes to travel, bound. A wide road is not as valuable as an open heart, for only a spacious heart creates a truly peaceful place in which life can flourish, bound. A large house is not as precious as a generous spirit, because only a generous heart can embrace and love countless people. A fortunate destiny is less important than a wholesome mind, for it is the mind that ultimately serves as the root of everything in life. First, human beings may be compared to two kinds of wells, one that remains open and accessible for everyone to benefit from, and another hidden away where no one can draw water, bound. How wonderful it is to become a person of value whom others can rely upon and seek out whenever they are in need of help or guidance. Fear. Therefore, do not fear being asked for assistance or even being taken advantage of. Instead, be concerned only if your heart has not yet become spacious enough to help others. Fact, in this life, honesty and kindness remain among the most precious treasures that every human being should strive to preserve and protect. Best, kindness is essential to every person because it is the purest light within the soul, illuminating the path ahead and guiding us through the uncertainties of a constantly changing world. Bucks, the light of goodness is like a gentle moon shining across the inner sky of the heart, possessing the power to touch, soften, and transform anyone who encounters it. Vow, a wholesome thought is like a seed being planted. A kind heart is like a flower blossoming in full beauty, and a good deed is the sweet fruit born from long and patient cultivation. Faith. Every human being enters this world carrying the seed of goodness within, and if that seed is carefully nurtured and watered each day, it will grow into a strong and enduring tree. Yet, there are those who, through ignorance and lack of awareness, lose that seed of goodness within themselves, causing their hearts to gradually become cold and distant from love and compassion. Others allow harmful thoughts and negative influences to stain the seed planted within their hearts, slowly developing a character marked by cruelty and a lack of empathy. In this world, no one is truly without need for kindness, and there is no heart that cannot eventually be touched by sincerity, compassion, and genuine goodness. Even souls that seem as hard as iron or as cold as ice will one day soften when touched by even a small ray of kindness and warmth. The highest expression of goodness is to do what is right without concern for reward or recognition, for such giving is pure, selfless, and free from attachment. A person who performs good deeds is like the moon, gradually becoming brighter with time, while one who commits harmful actions resembles the moon, slowly fading into darkness. This is because those who live virtuously continue accumulating blessings and inner light, while those who choose harmful paths gradually exhaust their merit and sink deeper into spiritual darkness. Every human being enters life carrying a certain measure of blessings and fortunate conditions, much like a moon already shining in the vast sky of existence. If we fail to cherish and cultivate those blessings while continuing to create negative karma, that light will gradually diminish and disappear into the shadows of suffering. Is it not truly regrettable when we ourselves allow the precious light within our own hearts to fade away and become lost? On the other hand, if we carefully nurture and protect our blessings, the radiance within will grow brighter and brighter like the full moon, gradually revealing its complete brilliance. This is the noble path that every person should aspire toward in order to live a meaningful, joyful, and fulfilling life. Remain mindful in every quiet moment of the present, for even a single instant of awakening is more valuable than many years spent wandering in delusion. Look upon life with the innocent eyes of a child, allowing the heart to open fully and reach the limitless shore of boundless love. Gain and loss are merely expressions of impermanence within life, so learn to let go and free your heart from attachment to fleeting things. When we know how to pause and become still, we realize that the river of life continues to flow gently, and that every sorrow eventually dissolves with time. 100 years of life will eventually pass away, and only by understanding the truth can we discover that genuine happiness rests within inner peace. Choosing kindness is not a sign of weakness, but rather an expression of understanding that goodness is the original nature of the human heart. Human beings are born with a naturally gentle nature, and therefore should not deliberately lead themselves onto paths of cruelty, harm, and suffering. Those who commit harmful actions will eventually encounter their corresponding consequences, which is why the wise always choose to plant wholesome causes in order to reap beneficial results. Dishonest people may achieve success quickly, yet only those who live truthfully and sincerely can travel far and endure the test of time. Always preserve a kind heart, no matter how harshly life may treat you. because doing so protects your peace and prevents you from being swept into negativity. Mind. When we live honestly and virtuously, we can rest peacefully without fear that hidden wrongdoings will be exposed. And this is a profound form of inner happiness. The heart of each person is like a field, and whatever seeds are planted there will eventually bear corresponding fruit, for nothing exists outside this law. Mind. If we live joyfully and wholeheartedly each day, our lives become lighter, healthier, and more vibrant, like plants stretching toward the nourishing sunlight. When the heart is filled with joy, a person naturally radiates grace and beauty, much like flowers blooming effortlessly in their season. Mind. It can seem as though all of nature joins in harmony to celebrate a soul that knows how to live with authentic happiness. Joy makes a person radiant and alive, while resentment and suffering only make both the face and the heart heavier with burdens. As one's appearance reflects the condition of the inner world, and a smile is among the clearest mirrors, revealing the true state of the heart. If joy resides within, what appears outwardly is a warm and radiant smile capable of brightening the lives of others. If sorrow fills the heart, what emerges instead is weariness, sadness, and a quiet sense of heaviness. If the mind is crowded with blame and complaints, the result will be ongoing resentment and dissatisfaction that refuse to fade away. When the heart is filled with love, what naturally manifests is understanding, compassion, and acceptance. If one continually nourishes harmful thoughts and intentions, the result will inevitably lead toward downfall, confusion, and suffering. The mind is like a mirror reflecting every seed planted within it, and all that we experience originates from the conditions of that inner landscape. When our face is twisted with displeasure, the reflection in the mirror appears distorted as well. And the fault lies not with the mirror, but with the state of mind that created the expression. Life itself resembles a great mirror, and when we smile at it, it reflects joy back to us. So never hesitate to offer a gentle smile to those around you. In a world filled with sadness and worry, if we learn to cleanse the mirror of our own heart, we will discover that life remains bright, beautiful, and worthy of appreciation. Even though uncertainty and change continue to exist around us, once the inner light is awakened, we begin to see everything with greater clarity and understanding. Every person we encounter is like a mirror, reflecting aspects of ourselves, helping us learn, grow, and recognize what still needs refinement within our own hearts. If our hearts are filled with love and understanding, life becomes wondrous and fragrant, like pure flowers blossoming in full beauty. No matter how wide a road may be, it cannot compare to the value of an open heart, for only a spacious heart creates a truly compassionate world. When the heart expands even a little more, life itself becomes vastly more spacious and free, no longer constrained by narrow and limiting thoughts. A grand house can never be as precious as a generous heart, and even a fortunate destiny cannot equal the value of a soul filled with genuine goodness. Between human beings, the difference is sometimes only a very small thing, yet that single difference can determine whether one lives in happiness or in suffering. And that difference lies in the breadth of the heart and the attitude toward life that each person chooses to cultivate and nourish day after day. Bound. Some people live like a well at a busy crossroads, always ready to benefit many others, while some are like a deep well hidden in a remote forest, difficult for anyone to approach. Fact. It is truly admirable when we become someone who can offer help and whom others trust enough to seek out whenever they need support and guidance. Fear. Therefore, do not fear being taken advantage of. Instead, be concerned that your heart may not yet be spacious enough to become a source of strength for others. Vast. The human mind is like a pathway, and the more it is filled with calculations and selfish pursuits, the narrower and more difficult that path becomes. Bound. A wide road is not as valuable as a broad and open heart, for only a spacious heart can create countless paths leading toward peace and well-being. Vast. Large homes are not as precious as a compassionate heart, and a fortunate destiny can never equal the value of a soul rooted in genuine kindness. Vow. A person who performs good deeds is like the moon, gradually becoming brighter, while one who commits harmful acts resembles the moon, slowly disappearing into darkness. And those who live virtuously continue to accumulate the light of blessings and merit, while those who do wrong gradually lose that precious radiance. And each person enters this world carrying a measure of blessings and fortunate conditions, much like a moon shining across the vast sky of life. Well, if one fails to nurture virtue and continues creating harmful karma, that inner light will slowly fade away until it eventually disappears. Babe. How unfortunate it is when we ourselves lose the beautiful qualities that have always existed within our own hearts. Bound. On the other hand, if we cherish and cultivate our blessings, the light within will become increasingly radiant and spread its warmth far and wide. Fact, this is the noble path that every person should choose if they wish to live a life of meaning, fulfillment, and genuine happiness. Found. In this life, honesty and kindness remain among the most essential qualities that every human being should carefully preserve and protect. Faith. Kindness is like a bright moon within the soul, capable of illuminating and transforming both our own inner world and the hearts of others. Found. That light does not merely illuminate, it also possesses the power to inspire, guide, and gently transform those who walk beneath its glow. Found. A wholesome thought is like a tiny seed. A kind heart is like a flower blossoming in full beauty. And a good deed is the sweet fruit that eventually ripens from it. Found. Every human being carries within them the seed of goodness from the moment they are born, and when nurtured properly, it can grow into a strong and magnificent tree. Found. Yet, some people lose that seed because they fail to protect it, causing their hearts to gradually become barren, dry, and cold. And others allow negativity and harmful influences to stain the seed of goodness, gradually shaping a character that lacks compassion and genuine love. Found. In this world, no one is without a need for kindness, and no one is beyond being touched by sincerity and genuine goodness. Even the hearts that seem strongest and most unyielding will eventually soften beneath the gentle light of compassion and loving kindness. Balls. The highest expression of goodness is to perform good deeds without expecting rewards, recognition, or anything in return. Vowed. The more selflessly a person lives, the more deeply they experience the blossoming of peace and happiness within their own heart. Find. In contrast, those who live selfishly are often surrounded by anxiety and unrest, making life feel increasingly heavy and burdensome. Then, everything, good or bad, begins within the mind, before eventually manifesting through words, actions, and the way we interact with the world. And those who are kind-hearted and generous often attract blessings into their lives, while those who are narrow-minded and harsh frequently encounter difficulties and misfortune. Then, ordinary people are often obscured by ignorance and therefore fail to recognize this principle, believing that everything happens merely by chance. Faith. Yet when the heart becomes sincere and aligned with the natural order of truth, we begin to see that every event unfolds according to clear causes and conditions. As when blessings are approaching, one can often recognize the signs simply by observing the good deeds a person has consistently performed. Faith. Likewise, when misfortune is near, the deeper causes can often be understood by looking at the unwholesome actions that have been cultivated over time. Faith. To attain blessings and avoid suffering, it is not enough merely to speak about doing good. One must first begin by correcting the faults within oneself. Reflect upon the sages and noble beings of the past. They possessed the same human form as we do, yet became guides for countless others through profound self-cultivation and discipline. Found. If we wonder why our own lives often fall short of greater purpose and value, it is because we so frequently become lost in ordinary desires and forget the deeper principles of being human. Found. When we act against righteousness, we sometimes convince ourselves that no one knows, allowing arrogance to arise while feeling no shame for our actions. Found. It is precisely this absence of healthy shame that causes people to drift deeper into delusion and gradually diminish their own worth without realizing it. Base. In life, few qualities are more precious than the ability to feel ashamed when we do wrong, for it is the foundation upon which noble character is built. Faith. Those who retain a sense of moral shame draw closer to the qualities of the wise, while those who lose it risk living according to their lowest impulses. Faith. Therefore, awakening a sense of moral responsibility and healthy shame is the first and most important step in correcting one's own faults. Play. The next quality that must be cultivated is a wholesome sense of caution, a fear of wrongdoing that prevents us from acting against the moral order of life. Whether we are in complete privacy or standing before many eyes, we should remember that every action remains subject to the inescapable law of cause and effect. Bound. Even when no one else knows of our mistakes, deep within there remains the witness of our own conscience and the universal truth that silently governs all things. Played. If the wrongdoing is serious, it will attract many forms of misfortune and suffering, while even minor faults can gradually diminish the blessings and merits that we presently possess. Find. Once we truly understand this principle, we cannot help but become more cautious, mindful, and attentive in every action we take. Found. Not only in solitude but also amid crowded places, we should maintain an upright heart and refrain from engaging in actions that violate what is right. Found. No matter how skillfully we attempt to conceal the darkness within, those hidden faults will eventually reveal themselves through our words, actions, and character over time. 5. In the end, we can never deceive ourselves, for our own conscience remains the clearest and most truthful mirror we will ever face. Found. When others discover the wrongs we have committed, we naturally feel ashamed and experience a painful loss of dignity and self-respect. And how could such a way of living fail to fill the heart with anxiety, fear, and inner unrest? Moreover, as long as even a single breath remains, no matter how great our mistakes may have been, there is still an opportunity to repent, transform, and begin anew. Ancient stories tell of people who spent much of their lives doing wrong, yet, upon awakening near the end of life, a single wholesome thought was capable of transforming their destiny. 5. This reveals the immense power of one sincere and virtuous intention, which can help dissolve the accumulated weight of countless past mistakes. It is like darkness that has existed for ages within a deep cave, yet the moment a single light appears, the darkness vanishes without leaving a trace behind. Therefore, regardless of whether a fault occurred long ago or only recently, the most important thing is to recognize it, turn back, and sincerely correct it. Life is inherently impermanent, and the human body is exceedingly fragile. When a single breath ceases, the opportunity for self-cultivation and transformation also disappears. At that point, even if one wishes to repent, it may already be too late, leaving behind only regret that can no longer be undone. If we spend our lives committing many wrongs, we may leave behind a damaged reputation that even devoted descendants cannot completely erase. And not only that, but we must also bear the heavy consequences of the karma we have created, making the path ahead increasingly difficult and painful. Reflecting deeply upon this truth naturally awakens caution and concern regarding our own harmful actions and unwholesome habits. The next essential step is to develop a firm and determined resolve to change, without hesitation, delay, or uncertainty. Most people fail to correct their faults because they have become so accustomed to old habits that they simply surrender to them without resistance. Therefore, we must awaken a powerful determination to overcome ourselves, refusing to sink into stagnation, complacency, or laziness. Even small mistakes should be treated like sharp thorns embedded in the flesh, requiring immediate attention and removal. As for major faults, they must be addressed with decisive courage, just as one removes a dangerous threat in order to protect oneself. This is the spirit of true diligence in correcting mistakes, swift, courageous, and free from procrastination. When we possess all three qualities, healthy shame, fear of wrongdoing, and firm determination to change, then any mistake can be transformed. Whenever we recognize a fault and immediately correct it, it is like ice and snow melting rapidly beneath the warmth of the sun. Human faults can be corrected through outward actions, through contemplation of truth and wisdom, or through direct transformation of the heart itself. Each method requires different forms of effort, yet all are directed toward the same goal of purifying and uplifting the soul. For example, if we once caused harm to living beings, we can now learn to respect, protect, and cherish life in all its forms. If we were once quick to anger, we can train ourselves to cultivate restraint and transform anger into calmness and peace. Such forms of correction begin with external behavior and gradually help us adjust the actions that once led us astray. However, merely controlling outward behavior is not enough. We must go deeper and transform the root causes hidden within the mind if we wish to attain lasting peace. Bound. Correcting only external actions may reduce visible mistakes, but the roots of those faults remain buried within the heart. And unless those roots are removed, new faults will continue to arise. Bowed. This is like changing only the surface while leaving the source untouched, which is why genuine transformation requires returning to the deepest levels of the inner mind. Bound. A wise person who seeks to correct faults learns to contemplate truth before harmful actions even manifest outwardly, thereby preventing them from arising in the first place. Bound. For instance, when considering the taking of life, we should reflect that heaven and earth nurture all beings with compassion, and every creature longs to continue living. Bowed. If we take the life of another being merely to sustain our own body, how can the heart remain truly at peace, knowing that such an act has caused suffering to another? Bound. Animals that are slaughtered endure profound pain, from being cut apart to being subjected to intense heat, suffering that penetrates every part of their bodies. Bound. Yet we consume those very bodies to nourish ourselves, even though the pleasure of the meal, no matter how lavish, lasts only a fleeting moment. Barred. Meanwhile, simple and modest meals are sufficient to sustain life and health, making it unnecessary to inflict harm upon countless living creatures. Bars. When we contemplate these truths deeply, we begin to understand that taking life not only causes suffering to others, but also diminishes our own blessings and virtue. Furthermore, all living beings possess awareness and sensitivity. They know fear, pain, and the desire to survive, and therefore share a common essence with humanity. Bound. If we have not yet attained the noble state of being able to protect and guide all beings, how can we bear to destroy the lives that they cherish so deeply? Bars. When harmed or killed, those beings may generate resentment and karmic ties that become difficult for us to escape in the future. Fast. When we contemplate these realities with genuine depth and sincerity, we naturally feel compassion arise within us. Place. Making it difficult to casually accept food obtained through the suffering and killing of living beings. Bind. Likewise, if we have often been prone to anger in the past, fight. We should reflect that the shortcomings of others are a natural part of being human and deserve understanding more than condemnation. Bind. When someone behaves wrongly or causes us pain, that wrongdoing belongs to them rather than to us, and therefore there is no need to nourish resentment within our hearts. Fight. When we understand this clearly, we realize that anger serves no beneficial purpose and only increases our own inner turmoil and suffering. Bind. In this world, there is no person so perfect that they are always right, nor is there any true teaching that encourages the cultivation of hatred and hostility. Arv. Much of what remains unfulfilled in our lives is the result of our own lack of cultivation and growth, which is why we should examine ourselves before blaming others. Bind. When we learn to use difficult circumstances as mirrors for self-reflection, every insult and disappointment becomes an opportunity for growth, refinement, and maturity. Bound. When others slander, criticize, or humiliate us, we should regard such experiences as a form of polishing that strengthens the heart and sharpens wisdom. Bond. If we can maintain such an attitude, then, instead of reacting with anger, we may receive these experiences with gratitude as valuable lessons on the path of awakening. Bind. When no anger arises within the heart, hurtful words naturally lose their power, and dissolve like a flame burning in empty space with nothing to cling to. Find. On the other hand, if we become angry and insist on arguing, we merely bind ourselves more tightly within a cycle of suffering and agitation. Bound. Anger is not only useless, but also deeply harmful, damaging both our well-being and the clarity of our own minds. Bound. All other faults should be contemplated in the same way, for when their true nature is clearly understood, they gradually lose their power and fade away. Mind. To correct mistakes at the level of the mind means recognizing that every action originates from thoughts and intentions arising within. Bond. Although mistakes appear in countless forms, they are all created by the mind, and when the mind is peaceful and stable, faults lose the conditions necessary to arise. Bard. Those who practice in this manner do not chase after individual faults one by one, but instead focus on maintaining a mind that is clear, pure, and mindful. Mind. When the mind continuously abides in wholesome and correct intentions, harmful and misguided thoughts find no opportunity to emerge. Mind. Just as darkness naturally disappears when sunlight shines, there is no need to struggle against it once the light is present. Mind. This is the deepest and most effective method of transformation because it addresses the root cause rather than merely treating the symptoms. Bound. All mistakes originate from the mind and therefore must also be transformed through the mind, just as a poisonous tree must be uprooted completely if one wishes to remove it. If only the branches and leaves are cut away, the tree will grow back again, just as faults will repeatedly return if their roots remain untouched. For this reason, correcting faults through inner transformation is always more powerful and produces results that endure over time. Bond. When we cultivate ourselves and maintain a pure heart, we become aware of an unwholesome thought the very moment it begins to arise and refuse to let it grow further. Bound. The instant we clearly recognize a harmful thought as it appears, that very awareness causes it to dissolve naturally, without force, suppression, or inner conflict. Bond. If we are not yet capable of transforming the roots of the mind directly, we should contemplate wisdom and truth so that we can gradually recognize and abandon mistaken views. If we still lack a deep understanding of these principles, we may begin by adjusting our outward behavior to prevent harmful actions from manifesting. When profound inner cultivation is combined with the correction of outward conduct, the path of transformation becomes far more stable, complete, and effective. However, if we remain limited to superficial methods without addressing the inner heart, lasting change will be difficult to achieve. Therefore, when we vow to correct our faults, we should seek the companionship of virtuous friends who can encourage, remind, and support us along the path of practice. Even in places where no one is watching, we should maintain an upright heart and continually remind ourselves to live in accordance with truth and virtue. Sincerely repent for the mistakes of the past and maintain diligent effort each day without becoming careless or complacent. By persevering in this way over time, we will gradually notice positive transformations within both our inner life and our daily experience. At times, we may feel that the heart has become lighter, more spacious, and less burdened by the worries and attachments that once weighed us down. There may also be moments when wisdom becomes clearer, allowing us to perceive situations with greater depth, insight, and understanding. Find. Even when surrounded by confusion and complexity, we remain mentally clear and no longer become entangled in unnecessary suffering. 4. When encountering those who once hurt us, we are able to remain calm and transform negative emotions into understanding and peace. Find. All of these signs indicate that we are gradually releasing the faults, attachments, and burdens accumulated from the past. Yet, we should never become proud of such progress, for arrogance itself can become a serious obstacle on the path of cultivation. Find. If we look back upon our lives and see no faults at all, it may simply mean that the mind remains clouded and unable to perceive itself clearly. Bowed. Those burdened by deep and persistent faults often display recognizable signs in their daily lives and behavior. For example, they may frequently experience gloominess, confusion, forgetfulness, or a constant sense of discomfort without understanding its cause. Or, when encountering people who are honest, kind, and upright, they may feel uneasy, embarrassed, or reluctant to draw near. When hearing sincere and truthful words, they resist accepting them, yet are easily attracted to misleading or harmful influences. At times, they may fall into states of anxiety, fantasy, or chaotic thinking that seem difficult to control. In more severe cases, their speech and actions may become increasingly disordered, and the mind itself may lose its balance and stability. 5. All of these manifestations are signs that unwholesome karmic influences are still exerting control over the inner mind and shaping one's experience of life. Once we recognize this, we should immediately give rise to a strong determination to change without hesitation, delay, or excuses. Let go of old habits and begin building a new way of life founded upon mindfulness, virtue, and wholesome intentions. Most importantly, we must never deceive ourselves, but remain completely honest with our own hearts in every thought that arises. The human mind is like a river, sometimes flowing with tremendous force, and at other times, moving gently and peacefully. Every emotion, whether joy, sorrow, or suffering, resembles currents of water that continue flowing without pause through the landscape of life. Some people see only the surface movement of these currents and never recognize the deeper nature of their own minds. The mind is also like clouds drifting across the sky, constantly appearing and disappearing. Once we understand this, attachment gradually loses its hold. The true nature of the mind is originally pure and vast, like the open sky, yet it becomes obscured by wandering thoughts and illusions. The mind is also like the earth itself, capable of receiving everything, while still preserving its inherent stillness and stability. No matter how many restless thoughts arise, that original purity remains unchanged beneath them. When we truly understand this, we learn to return to a state of serenity and no longer become swept away by external circumstances. A single thought can guide an entire course of action and become the seed from which either wholesome or unwholesome results emerge. If harmful intentions arise within the heart, our words and actions will carry suffering and eventually produce corresponding consequences. Conversely, when we maintain a kind and wholesome mind, peace and happiness naturally accompany us wherever we go. Everything we do is like a shadow following a form, inseparable from ourselves and impossible to leave behind. But when others hurt us, if we continue holding on to the memory, resentment will remain alive and never truly fade away. 5. Yet if we learn to release the past and stop nourishing bitterness, the heart becomes lighter, freer, and more at ease. 5. Returning hatred with hatred only prolongs suffering endlessly, while only compassion possesses the power to transform hostility and resentment. This is one of the most impartial laws of life, a truth that no one can alter or escape. Life is inherently impermanent, and death may arrive at any moment without favoring or excluding anyone. 5. Those who understand this deeply let go of needless competition and conflict, choosing instead to live with peace in every passing moment. But, meanwhile, those who remain immersed in desire and fail to master themselves continue to be carried away by the endless currents of suffering. 1. A person who lives carelessly and lazily creates suffering for themselves, just as a powerful wind can easily topple a tree whose roots are weak and shallow. Much of our pain and helplessness originates from failing to govern ourselves and allowing the mind to chase after worldly desires and attachments. But if we contemplate the reality that this body is not inherently pure and maintain continuous mindfulness, we become less vulnerable to inferior cravings and temptations. But practicing moderation in food and diligently cultivating discipline strengthens the mind until it becomes as steady as a mountain, unmoved by external temptations. 5. Even if one wears the appearance of a spiritual practitioner, a heart still polluted by greed and anger remains far from the path of genuine purity. But a true practitioner is one who learns to free themselves from inner afflictions and lives honestly with their own conscience. But when we uphold ethical conduct and live with integrity, life naturally becomes more noble, dignified, and worthy of respect. The person who can truly master themselves is the one deserving of admiration, for they are no longer controlled by destructive emotions. If we mistake falsehood for truth, we fall deeper into confusion and drift farther away from the path that leads toward wisdom. Only by living truthfully and acting with integrity can we approach genuine authenticity and righteousness in life. 5. A poorly built house is easily penetrated by rain, just as a person who neglects inner cultivation is easily invaded by desire and temptation. In contrast, one who practices diligently resembles a house built upon a solid foundation, remaining firm despite storms and turbulent weather. But those who live recklessly and without mindfulness will experience suffering both now and in the future as a result of their misguided actions. Meanwhile, those who cultivate themselves and perform wholesome deeds enjoy peace and happiness in both the present and the days yet to come. When harmful causes are planted, suffering follows as inevitably as a shadow follows the body. When wholesome causes are planted, joy and happiness naturally blossom within the heart. Those who commit harmful actions are often tormented by the consequences of their own behavior and struggle to escape the cycle of suffering. By contrast, people who live with kindness consistently experience a sense of peace, ease, and inner contentment. One who merely speaks about practice without truly living, it is like a hired herdsman tending another person's cattle, possessing nothing of genuine value for themselves. A person who speaks little yet practices diligently gradually releases greed, anger, and delusion, moving steadily toward awakening and wisdom. Such a person is truly worthy of the spiritual path, for they have learned how to live in harmony with mindfulness, sincerity, and right understanding. Freedom from heedlessness is the path that leads to an awakened life, while carelessness and indulgence inevitably lead to decline and the wasting away of one's precious human existence. A person who lives without heedlessness remains clear-minded, mindful, and at peace, while one who abandons vigilance lives as though they have lost touch with their true self. Only genuine awareness and mindfulness can help a person transcend the cycle of birth and death and move toward lasting peace and liberation. Preserving ethical conduct and practicing diligently allow both body and mind to become lighter, purer, and more serene with time. A wise person continually trains the mind and maintains awareness in every passing moment, never allowing carelessness to take root. When deep inner stability is attained, the chains of suffering that once bound the heart gradually begin to loosen and dissolve. Those who persevere in practice learn how to guide their minds skillfully and align their lives with the wisdom of the Dharma. As heedlessness is abandoned, good reputation, virtue, and blessings naturally increase and continue to flourish. People who make sincere and continuous effort overcome their weaknesses and gradually become masters of themselves. A mind that is steady, like an island in the midst of a vast ocean, cannot be swept away by the raging waves of circumstance. Those lacking wisdom who remain immersed in carelessness continue creating karma and eventually reap the suffering born from it. The diligent practitioner treasures every wholesome quality like a priceless jewel and refuses to squander life in meaningless indulgence. Such people are not carried away by sensual pleasures, but preserve the purity of their hearts while seeking a deeper and more enduring peace. True happiness does not arise from external possessions or temporary pleasures, but from the profound stillness and stability of the mind. Only those who cultivate wisdom can overcome heedlessness and arrive at genuine clarity and understanding. Standing firmly upon the foundation of wisdom, they view life with equanimity and are no longer controlled by suffering. The awakened person remains steady amid the uncertainties of the world and is not carried away by the confusion that still affects others. They resemble a skilled rider who advances far beyond those who lack direction, steadily progressing along the path of awakening. Through perseverance and diligent effort, they attain noble accomplishments within their spiritual journey and inner life. Those who practice with dedication develop the ability to govern themselves and move toward higher states of being, no longer dragged into the chaos created by heedlessness and distraction. Whether praised or criticized, one who understands the Dharma maintains an unwavering heart and refuses to let external circumstances disturb inner peace. Those immersed in carelessness chase after fleeting pleasures, while diligent practitioners recognize such pursuits as distractions that threaten their well-being. By practicing profound teachings sincerely, we gradually untie the knots of suffering accumulated over many years and move closer to liberation. A person who genuinely values diligence never allows themselves to sink into heedlessness because they clearly understand it to be a source of suffering. Fast. When we persistently follow the path of righteousness and wisdom, deep peace gradually reveals itself, and afflictions slowly settle into stillness. Hard. To attain liberation, we must distance ourselves from fearful and restless mental states, for they prevent the mind from becoming truly stable. Thus, the human mind is often carried away by circumstances like water flowing downstream, which is why it must be trained, guided, and mastered. Just as a skilled craftsman straightens an arrow with care and precision, a practitioner must learn to straighten and refine the mind. An untrained mind thrashes about like a fish removed from water, but once disciplined and understood, it gradually becomes calm and peaceful. A determined person courageously overcomes temptation and steadily removes the afflictions that cloud the heart and mind. A mind left unchecked leaps endlessly like a restless monkey, forever chasing pleasures and rarely finding true rest. Yet when the mind is mastered, one attains enduring tranquility and remains undisturbed by changing external conditions. The mind is subtle and difficult to perceive, but if left uncontrolled, it becomes guided by desire and leads people into cycles of suffering. Then, when mastery of the mind is achieved, inner joy spreads naturally throughout one's life, without any need to seek fulfillment elsewhere. There is nothing more valuable than learning to discipline the mind, for this is the key to overcoming every form of suffering. Those who cannot maintain a stable and concentrated mind find it difficult to understand the deeper teachings and develop genuine wisdom. When the mind remains unsettled, faith becomes unstable as well, making the growth of wisdom far more difficult. Only by letting go of desire and hatred can we rise beyond dualistic thinking and live in a state of awakened awareness. This body is fragile and easily broken, and therefore should be cared for wisely without becoming the object of excessive attachment. Keep the mind as strong as a fortified citadel, so that wisdom may flourish and dispel the darkness of ignorance. Do not become so captivated by fleeting glory and worldly success that you forget the truth of impermanence, for all things eventually pass away. When consciousness departs from the body, that body becomes merely an inert form, no longer possessing the importance we once imagined. Returning hatred with hatred only prolongs the cycle of suffering and rebirth, which is why compassion must be used to transform resentment. No matter how deeply parents may love us, they cannot bear the consequences of our karma on our behalf. Each person must take responsibility for their own actions. Only by planting wholesome causes can we truly create a beautiful and beneficial future for ourselves and for those whose lives we touch. Even if one succeeds in conquering many things in the world, such achievements can never equal the value of understanding the truth and living in accordance with the Dharma. A person who practices diligently is like a skilled artisan, weaving beautiful garlands, with every wholesome action contributing to the creation of something noble and enduring. When we realize that this body is as fragile as a bubble and as fleeting as a flash of lightning, we cease clinging to things that are temporary and insubstantial. Those who become immersed in sensual pleasures are like people swept away by a flood, unaware that danger is steadily approaching. Desires can never be completely satisfied, and when death arrives, there is no bargaining with it, and no postponing its inevitable coming. Faith. A wise person knows how to live in the world without causing harm, just as one who gathers flowers carefully without damaging the branches that bear them. Faith. Rather than searching for the faults of others, they continually return to examine themselves and refine their own character. Faith. In every action, whether deliberate or accidental, mindfulness must be maintained so that no new, unwholesome karma is created. Beautiful words and noble ideas become meaningless if they are never put into practice and embodied in daily life. Just as a beautiful flower without fragrance cannot fully reveal its beauty, fine words without action fail to touch the hearts of others. Best. When words and actions move together in harmony, wholesome results naturally arise and manifest themselves. Just as countless flowers woven together form a magnificent garland, many small acts of goodness combine to create extraordinary value. Amid the constant changes of life, virtuous actions become a fragrance that spreads freely, without limitation or obstruction. The fragrance of morality is not constrained by the direction of the wind, but travels everywhere, bringing benefit to all beings it touches. The fragrance of virtue extends across space and time, and even the strongest contrary winds cannot diminish the value of a truly noble heart. The finest worldly fragrances, whether from precious woods or sacred lotus blossoms, cannot compare with the fragrance of ethical conduct and human goodness. No matter how pure and beautiful a flower may be, its fragrance remains external, while the fragrance of a wholesome heart reaches much deeper and lasts far longer. The reputation of a virtuous person spreads naturally throughout the world, blending with heaven and earth and touching countless hearts without effort. When ethical principles are upheld sincerely and life is lived with integrity, both body and mind become purified and free from heedlessness. One who attains genuine peace is someone who has freed themselves from the chains of affliction and is no longer governed by ignorance. Even from muddy and impure waters, a fragrant lotus can bloom, just as people of wisdom and compassion can arise amid a world filled with suffering. Many are carried away by craving and attachment, and therefore fail to recognize the truth. Yet there are always those who preserve the light of wisdom and loving kindness. A sincere practitioner illuminates the source of their own mind, and thereby rises above the ordinary sufferings of worldly existence. Meanwhile, those who remain lost in confusion carry hidden sorrow within them and walk life's long road without seeing a way out. Those who do not listen to the Dharma continue wandering through the cycle of rebirth, uncertain of when their journey will finally end. In life, if we fail to find wise companions, it becomes much easier to be swept away by suffering, confusion, and attachment. Those who cling tightly to the ego and regard everything as belonging to themselves will find suffering constantly following them without release. People lacking understanding often fail to recognize their own mistakes, whereas the wise continually examine themselves and seek improvement. The foolish believe they already know enough and therefore cease growing, while the wise remain humble and continue learning throughout their lives. When a person lacking wisdom encounters a wise teacher but fails to learn. They resemble a spoon that touches food, yet never experiences its flavor. In contrast, a wise person who studies the Dharma understands it deeply, just as the tongue fully appreciates the subtle taste of a fine meal. Those who refuse to practice and instead cling to an inflated sense of self ultimately harm themselves and lose precious opportunities for growth. They neglect wholesome actions and eventually bear the consequences of the mistakes they have chosen to commit. 5. Negative habits that are left untransformed accumulate over time, and when they finally bear fruit, they produce suffering that cannot be avoided. Only when painful consequences fully mature do many people recognize their errors. Yet, by then, the opportunity for easy change has often passed. By contrast, those who perform good deeds without seeking reward naturally receive joy, blessings, and peace in return. Every wholesome action produces beneficial results, and although those results may not appear immediately, they will certainly arrive in due time. People lacking wisdom often assume that harmful actions carry no consequences. Yet, when the results eventually emerge, they come to understand the reality of suffering. All negative consequences do not appear at once, but accumulate quietly, like glowing embers concealed beneath a layer of ash. When the proper conditions arise, those consequences burst forth and consume the very person who created them. Those who chase after fame, wealth, and empty worldly rewards often live in anxiety and dissatisfaction, never feeling truly fulfilled. 5. Their minds become entangled in restless thoughts and remain fixed upon disappointments and things that have not gone according to their wishes. 4. Even attaining high positions or great power cannot bring genuine peace if the mind itself has not been purified and brought into harmony. If a spiritual practitioner still seeks to be feared, revered, or surrounded by worldly authority, then they have already drifted away from the true and noble path of practice. As long as one remains attached to fame, status, and power, one is still bound by worldly concerns and will find it difficult to attain genuine liberation. Those who remain lost in ignorance continue walking the road that leads towards suffering, while those who understand the Dharma naturally turn their steps toward awakening and wisdom. When we clearly recognize the difference between these two paths, we learn to let go of what is unnecessary and live a life of peace, freedom, and serene contentment. Namo Amitabha Buddha. Find a single teaching of the Buddha, when remembered, may awaken us for a brief moment. Yet, a single teaching of the Buddha, when truly put into practice, has the power to transform an entire lifetime. If you have found today's reflection meaningful and beneficial, please consider liking, following, and sharing it with others. 5. This is not only a gesture of support for the channel, but also a beautiful way to help spread goodness and wisdom, allowing the Dharma to reach more people who are ready to receive its guidance. Thank you sincerely for your companionship and support. May you always preserve a peaceful heart amid the ever-changing currents of life, living each day with mindfulness, compassion, understanding, and genuine happiness. Namo Amitabha Buddha.